I just can't believe what an extraordinary birth story I get to tell you all. Even though it was such a roller coaster ride, even though there was intervention at the end and also potentially intervention in the middle, I am so proud of myself. I'm so proud of my birth team, and I'm walking away feeling so grateful and proud of the birth that I ended up having. I guess the best place to start is at the beginning. I would say I went into early labour about a week before I gave birth to Eloise. And I say that this has happened because on Thursday, when Sam was at work, that I swear I felt contractions in the night.
I have not properly slept since 2, and I think I'm feeling contractions. Very mild, but very significantly different from what I have been feeling. Sam's at work at the moment. I don't really want to wake him right now, even though I know he would want to be awake. So I think I'm gonna hold out for the next few hours. I'm honestly just trying to sleep through them, or at least rest, because it's nighttime. Like, what else am I gonna do? It's so exciting. It makes me emotional thinking that this is finally that process to get to meet our baby for the first time. See you guys in the morning.
My body just felt different. It felt like things were happening, and I've been very connected to my body throughout my pregnancy. So I was kind of getting these signs that things were starting to brew, things were starting to change and soften and work towards birth. But it was still quite a few days before I actually went into labor. And those next few days, the contractions that I was feeling were kind of getting stronger and lighter. They weren't consistent at all. Some days I would have contractions in the morning that would then peter off towards the night, and other days I had them at nighttime, which would wake me up and keep me stirring all night, and then they would peter off through the day. We spent that whole week just trying to encourage labor to begin, to make my body feel safe and happy and comfortable. Sam and I did just dances, we ate delicious food, we played board games, we watched movies, and we just enjoyed each other's company in that last week, just kind of waiting for things to progress. We ended up getting to our baby girl's due date, and still nothing was happening, and still nothing happened for a few more days after that. Then on the 14th of July, I had an acupuncture appointment that I had booked months ahead while I was doing my osteo appointments. I booked this acupuncture appointment as a just in case I don't go into labor, maybe acupuncture, which is a natural needling technique to, I guess, stimulate nerves and organs to act. I'm not an expert, so I guess that's the best knowledge I have, but it's essentially a natural way that you can induce labor if you haven't gone into labor yet. At the end of the day, though, it is about your body, your hormones, your baby all working together to send the message that your body is ready for labor to actually kick off, but it wasn't going to hurt to give it a go. So on the 14th of July, I went to my acupuncture appointment feeling pretty disheartened. At this point, I was 40 weeks and 3 days, and I just wasn't feeling like my contractions were getting any stronger. I couldn't tell what was happening, and I didn't know what to expect from the acupuncture appointment or whether it would even work. So I went in and Robert did his thing. He put needle points into different acupuncture points and then stimulated them as well. It was such an odd experience because there was this like electric shock one that he did on one of my fingers and my leg that was literally like twitching my finger. And then other points that he used literally brought on a contraction in my body or made baby wiggle around, which was just amazing that your body can be so connected through different pressure points. He also sent us home with some homework so that Sam could support me during my labor when it did happen. So he gave us some acupressure points, which were very similar to some of the points where he put the needles in. These were points that Sam could use during labor to, whether it was ease the pain of a contraction or continue to bring on the labor process. So like after my acupuncture appointment, Sam and I would press on, I think it was this point here and here on my ankle. We would press those points to kind of encourage the work that Robert had done to continue and hopefully encourage labor to begin at some point. I remember at the end of our appointment together, Robert said, okay, so I'm going to book you in for an appointment tomorrow just in case labor doesn't begin, but really labor should start any point from now. And I was like, excuse me, what? Like, as in, am I leaving this office right now and I'm about to go into labor? Is it about to happen right now? Is it going to happen tonight, tomorrow? Like, what kind of timeline are we working with? Because I don't know if I'm ready yet. He couldn't tell me when, but I just kind of felt that at some point in the next 24 hours to 48 hours, labor should begin. And if not, I would come back for my next appointment. We went home. I was in this like excited, euphoric kind of state. It was a very interesting car ride home. I felt almost like I was on something. So we went home. We continued pressing those pressure points, hoping that it would stimulate something. And nothing much was really happening. We just went about our evening like normal. Sam went and played games in the night. I went to sleep at about 10. And yeah, I guess I kind of felt a bit disheartened. Not that I was expecting things to happen so quick, but you know, if you're doing acupressure or acupuncture, you kind of want things to speed up a little bit. That night, I decided if labor was going to begin, I wasn't sleeping in my own bed and I didn't want to make a huge mess. So that night, I insisted on sleeping on a towel and also wearing an adult-sized diaper, which I had plenty of for postpartum. So that's how I went to sleep. That was the first night that I did it this way. But something felt like it could happen. I felt pretty confident in Robert and just my body. And so yeah, that's how I went to sleep. And then at 11:57, only minutes from midnight, my waters broke. And thank goodness I had that diaper on because I just woke up to like a gush of water, and then as I rolled out of bed, I felt even more coming out, and it was just incredible. The diaper caught it all, which is fantastic, and I went to the bathroom and I changed it over, and as I walked past Sam playing computer games, I just gave him one of these ones. As in, things are starting. I didn't feel any contractions yet, but waters breaking are a pretty like clear indicator that things are going to ramp up pretty quick. At this point, I wasn't feeling any contractions, so I went to bed, and I was hoping that I could keep sleeping. But then half an hour in, like at 12:30, I came out to Sam. My contractions were starting. I was still fairly good at, you know, just breathing through them. They weren't too strong or intense. It was just kind of like this building pressure, and then it would go away just as it started to get like noticeably uncomfortable. So I went out, I told Sam, like, I'm pretty sure I'm about to go into labor. My contractions are starting. I'm still okay to sleep through them, but it's probably best if I'm going to be up for the next few hours that you go to bed, because otherwise we're going to have a really long day ahead of us and at least one of us needs to be awake. I forgot to also mention that the night before this, so on the 14th, I had a really terrible sleep. I ended up waking up at 2 a.m. and then just not being able to fall asleep until 5 and then being up again at 7 a.m. So I was running on fumes at this point and had only had a couple of hours of sleep before these contractions and the water breaking all happened. So I'm pretty tired at this point, but it is what it is. So Sam comes to bed with me and I end up only sleeping or trying to sleep for another half hour before the contractions start getting so intense that I kind of have to get up to feel like I can breathe through them and move through them. Like I can't just keep laying down trying to sleep through them. So I tell Sam to stay in bed. I just sit in front of the fire. I have some clary sage and some lavender essential oils vaporizing into the air. I get some snacks, some water, and my birth ball, and I just do whatever feels comfortable. So from about 12:30 until 3 a.m., I am breathing through these contractions by myself. I'm going through my meditations and just my mantras in my mind, making sure that I'm staying calm, getting excited for the birth ahead of me, and just taking it really easy. I found that what worked best during this time was just to have some oxytocin-inducing music on, which is just calming, moving my body on the birth ball, and then getting up and actually hovering over a table to do some breath work when the contractions were happening. But after doing this for about 3 hours or so, the contractions definitely started to get a lot more intense. There was a lot more pressure. They seemed to be coming more often. And so, though I was doing fairly well on my own, I felt the need to get Sam up so that he could help me with the pressure points. I was getting a lot of pain in my lower back and on my sides as well. And so, I just needed someone to be pushing on them or just creating a bit of pressure and giving me some support. So at 3 a.m., I go in and I try to wake Sam up, but of course, he's already been awake and restless for 3 hours with the excitement of the contractions. As the contractions begin to start getting stronger, we end up giving the midwife a call just to let her know what's going on. It's pretty late at night time. We don't know how long we're going to keep going, but our goal is to stay at home as long as we can until we feel the need to go into hospital because we can't keep maintaining it on our own. We're first-time parents. This is our first time going through birth altogether, so we definitely want the support of our midwife and the hospital team, but we feel confident to do that first stage for ourselves, and I think we did do it really well. At some point, I think the contractions begin to get even stronger, and so doing it on the floor in the living room with just a bit of counter pressure is starting to get too much. The midwife suggests to start timing the contractions, so for Sam to start timing them, and for us to also go and labour in the shower so that the heat can take off some of that pressure. So I head into the shower, we put the shower head and the hot water on my back where Sam was creating counter pressure, and I just kind of move and sway through it. This point in time is also a chance for Sam to actually pack all of the rest of our things into the car. I already had my hospital bag packed. I had a list of all the other things that we would need to add to it. And then it was also just a matter of letting our friends know that this was happening so that they could come and pick up the dogs in the morning. So this is all happening behind the scenes while I'm in the shower. And everything was going pretty well. The shower was absolutely incredible. We had some of the essential oils dripped on the shower base as well, which then was coming out into the air and smelt incredible and was just really uplifting and distracting also through the contractions. But at some point, unfortunately, the shower ran out of hot water and instantly became cold. The pressure of the contractions became stronger once again, and Sam's still running around like a headless chook, so he can't support me as much as we would both want him to be at this point, and so he sets me up by the fireplace again, makes sure I've got my water, makes sure I have some food, and then I just kind of have to breathe through the last few contractions on my own. And when he can, he kind of popped in to try help me as well. But we noticed at this point that it was definitely starting to ramp up.
Diane's contractions are getting so intense that she starts getting a bit blurry on the details, and she's focusing so much on what's happening with her body that she doesn't know what's going on outside. So at this point in the story, Diane's contractions were every 2.5 to 3 minutes. We were told when she was getting 4 contractions every 10 minutes to come into hospital. At this point, she was having 3. So we weren't quite there yet, but they were intense enough that Diane wasn't able to pay attention to what was going on. Like you might have noticed, she just said that she was by herself by the fire and Sam was trying to do his thing. What was happening from my perspective is for 45 seconds, every 2.5 minutes, I was coming and pressing on Diane's lower back to relieve the pressure. And then the moment the contractions stopped, I was sprinting around the house, grabbing this, grabbing that, double checking the list, making sure we've got everything that we need, with a timer in my pocket that was vibrating every 2 minutes so that I had time to get back to her to press on her back again. So headless chook is definitely the right word.
Sam gives the midwife a call once again, and at this point it's closer to 5 a.m. So she says we can come into the hospital. She'll set us up ready to go. It sounds like I'm in active labor at this point, she can confidently say. I think I was having contractions on the phone while Sam was speaking to her on loudspeaker. So she felt pretty confident that we were at the stage where we would be able to come into hospital without them sending us away. The drive to get to the hospital is about 15 minutes. I ended up having 9 contractions in that time that we were driving, 2 in the car before we headed off, and then the rest on the drive. I remember just having my eyes closed, trying to stay focused, trying to get somehow comfy. I ended up pushing my chair like forward because I guess it kind of imitated like having Sam there. We had a hot water bottle on my back as well to have that heat going into that pressure point, and I just had my eyes closed, staying focused, and I would like open them every now and again just to kind of see where we were as we were driving. I felt so out of it at this point. Like I was really just connected to my body and what was unfolding within me. We got to hospital at about 6 a.m. because this is when in our paperwork I noticed they checked us in, and I had several contractions just trying to get to the hospital. Sam has footage of this, which is crazy to see. There were points where like I literally just had to get down on hands and knees to breathe through my contraction, couldn't walk anymore, and eventually we got to the labor room, and the midwife got some hot water ready in the shower so that we could go straight in there, had the birth ball, had a mat on the floor, towels to keep Sam warm, because a lot of the shower and the hot water was more angled at me and he just kind of had to maneuver around me. During this part of my labor, what worked best for me was pretty similar to what we were doing earlier on. We kind of took that early labor stage at home as a practice run to figure out what was working for me, to figure out what felt good and what didn't. And so we continued a lot of that later on. So we did a lot of counter pressure, whether it was on my back or on my hips, depending on what felt good. I would just smack Sam's hand away or put it in the right place as I needed to. I felt like I could still kind of chat. I was very like mellow in my chatter, but you know, we were still able to communicate here and there throughout it. And then when the contractions were happening, I just felt so on top of them. I felt like I really had control. As a contraction was coming on, I would put myself into a position that felt good, whether it was on all fours, whether it was standing up, hovering over like those railings in the shower or like over the birth ball. And I would just breathe and moan through them, just to help me get through. We brought those essential oils along with us as well, so we had those going in the shower. The midwife put on like a meditative track as well, so that was just on repeat, and I could kind of hear it as I zoned in and out of my contractions. And then I also had the urge to pee throughout. So anytime I got the urge, we were in the bathroom, so it was nice and easy. Went to the toilet, did what I needed to, and then back to the shower to labor.
So at this point, guys, Di is completely inside her own body and focusing on what's going on with her, and things are happening around her as she's explained, but what's happening with me is definitely a little bit different. So our designated midwife was off duty because it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, so she had been called by the on-duty midwife, so we did have the secondary. And the room wasn't quite ready to go. So while Di was having her contractions and she was in the shower, I was with the midwife, just ticking boxes to make sure the room, when we did emerge into it, was exactly how it needed to be. So that was happening while Di was going through the process. Di's demeanor at this point was definitely very calm, and very loving. Like she never said a mean word to me the entire time, but there was definitely an urgency and a need for my presence as safety. If I was in the next room talking to the midwife and a contraction start, she would start screaming out for me to come and put pressure on her back. And sometimes I wasn't even able to do that much. Just my presence being there was that added layer of mental protection for her to be able to go into her space and weather the storm.
I loved that our midwife gave us the space and that the hospital gave us the space. That bathroom ended up just being this beautiful private zone for Sam and I to be intimate with one another, to support one another, and just to feel excited about what was happening to us. We kept laboring like this for a while, and I remember just drifting in and out with my eyes open and closed and seeing that the sun was starting to rise. And not long after noticing this, Claudia, the midwife at the time, came in and said, "I have a surprise for you." And the moment she said that, I was like, my midwife is here. Like, the person that's been supporting me throughout my whole pregnancy is here. And I remember in that moment just having the strongest contraction I had so far. I think I must have felt just so excited, cared for, supported, confident in my ability, because my midwife was coming to join us as well, that like my body was just like, let's go, let's kick it up a gear. And so because I went into my contraction, she was like, "Oh, okay, I'll come back a little bit later." And so she went away and we kept contracting for a while, and then eventually she said it again, and we were able to see that our beautiful midwife Nicole was there, ready to support the team. Part of the reason we went with our hospital is because they've got the midwifery-led group where you get the same midwife throughout all your appointments of your pregnancy. They check in the whole time. They go through your birth plan with you. They talk you through all the changes and things happening, and then they are there with you for your birth. So I felt really confident that Nicole knew exactly what I wanted out of my birth, and she knew how to support me and Sam best during this time. Once Nicole got there as well, we were able to get the bath filled up because I had wanted to do a water birth. The shower was fantastic, but I wanted that later part of my birth to be in bath. And so the bath was ran. We eventually moved into the bath and just tried to get into a position that felt comfortable, or a position where I felt like I had enough strength behind me. Poor Sam, at this point, the giant man that he is, kind of had to maneuver into whatever position he could in order to create that counter pressure, because honestly, throughout my contractions, especially during active labor, like I just needed his hands on me for the whole duration. Like I was getting him to press pretty hard, and the whole time I remember him just like talking and giving me love and supportive messages, just right here close. We were together, we were cuddling, we were kissing, and just enjoying this moment together. But the contractions were definitely intense at this point.
This moment that Di's talking about is a moment that will live with me forever. It was a really special, beautiful moment. But it was also, for me, a feat in the journey, because we were in this bath for quite a few hours, and I'm 6'2", and the bath wasn't that large. So as Di said, I had to maneuver into all these positions, but often if I found a position where Di was comfy, it was strap in and stay put. And I'm actually quite shocked that my body was able to... I was able to tell my body to be like, "No, you're staying put. That muscle's not cramping. It is pushing through. You'll be fine. Your wife's giving birth. Suck it up." And my body did. And I remember literally speaking to my calf at one moment to be like, "No, you settle down." And it did. And I'll never forget that.
We laboured in the bath for however long. One of the other things that I requested was not to be able to see any clocks in the room so that I didn't time myself. As a teacher, I'm so used to watching a clock, and I knew that would create a lot of unnecessary pressure. So we laboured in the bath for a set duration of time, and at some point I started to get an urge to push. It kind of felt essentially like I wanted to do a poo. And I remember just being like, I really think I need to do a poo. And so we were just moving between bath, shower, toilet, bath, shower, toilet at this point as I was trying to navigate this feeling. And it came to a point where my midwife was like, "Di, if you have the urge to push, whether it's a poo or a baby, we're going to find out. So just, if you feel like you need to do it, just push and we'll see how we go." I think at this point too, we ended up having her check me, which was the first time. Again, a request that I had was to not be checked if it wasn't necessary unless I gave permission. And at this point, I was curious. And so when she checked, things were very positive. We could actually feel baby's head like descending as I was doing my pushing, which was really amazing. It was really exciting to know we were getting closer and closer. Labouring in the bath was amazing. because of the water, the pain down below, I couldn't really feel as I was pushing. The only issues that I guess I really did have is I was feeling really hot and I couldn't get comfortable in between for my rest. But another thing that I did notice is I just couldn't brace myself on anything because as I was pushing, I kind of wanted to push on something and have Sam give me counter pressure on the back, but I couldn't like brace myself. So I made the decision partway through the pushing with no progress being made that I wanted to go into the shower and try laboring in there for a while.
So this is the part in the story where my role starts to become a bit more active. I mean, at this point, I've just been the support role and just doing everything I can to be there for Di. But at this point, it's, as Di said, she didn't know what time it was. It was about midday, and the process of pushing was from midday just onwards. And once the process of pushing starts, it's meant to go relatively quickly. It can be as short as 15 minutes before you start seeing some serious progress. We weren't getting any progress. That meant that the obstetrician was starting to poke their head in the door, and they really wanted to come in and see what was going on. We had decided we wanted to have as little medical intervention as we can possibly have, but we just wanted to lean as far into a physiological birth as possible. And at this point, Di's body wasn't giving her any warning signs. We weren't telling her we were worried. There was no reason to be concerned. But at this point, I was getting talks from the midwives saying that if we spend too long pushing, we're going to risk a hemorrhage on the other side, because what happens is the womb becomes exhausted from the process of pushing and trying to push the baby, and then when the baby finally comes out the other side of birth, it collapses, and that collapsing stops the process of contracting on the wound that is left by the placenta. And my midwife was afraid that was going to happen, and Di was going to have a bleed out the other side. So at this point, for me, if you've been paying attention to the outside details of the channel for a while, I've been spending a lot of time at a men's circle and working on my mental health. And for me, this was a huge personal journey and a moment for me, because I knew what kind of man I wanted to be and what kind of husband and father and partner I wanted to be. And this was my moment to be the bear at the door and really like step up and look after my wife. And I had the option to just hand all responsibility over to the doctor and the midwives. At this point, Di was completely malleable to anything I suggested. She would have said yes to anything. She was in full trust mode. And if I said we had to do this, she was going to do it. So this was a big moment for me to become the bear at the door. There's quite a lot of pressure on me to allow the doctors into the room, the obstetricians into the room, to check out what's happening with Di. What's happening with Di is she feels great, and what I was observing was that she was actually learning to push, and she was, to keep it PG, afraid of accidentally having a bowel movement. So she wasn't leaning into the feeling, as she said before, of needing to poo quite as much, and what she was more doing is tensing up as opposed to pushing. And it actually took a couple of hours for her to find a comfortable space where she felt like she was able to surrender to that feeling. And I definitely had noticed that when she was coached through with the midwife, she was really like getting some progress. But when the midwife left, which the midwife had to spend a lot of time outside talking to the obstetrician and checking on baby to make sure she was safe because we were at pushing phase, there was just like this imbalance of support and expectation, and there was a lot of things going on in that moment. And what happened was Di wanted to go back to the shower because she felt like she could get into a better pushing position. At this point, they were saying, we think we need to have an obstetrician come in, and so I made a deal with them. We'll go to the shower, 20 minutes, and then the obstetrician can come in. So in that last 20 minutes of being in the shower, Di found some really comfortable positions and she was feeling comfortable, but she was absolutely exhausted. But around this time, we did start to see hair and we started to see a bit of a head, which was encouraging, but also a bit confusing for what came next.
We got to a point where I had actually been pushing for 3 hours, which is not standard practice. So having been pushing for so long and still not seeing like that end point happening, feeling quite discouraged at this point, feeling absolutely knackered and exhausted, we knew that we needed to make a different decision. After talking with Sam, I ended up coming to the decision that I was happy to have a vacuum delivery. This was one of my first intervention options that I wanted to give a go to. And so we called in the doctor, and the doctor came in to examine me and then do the vacuum if that's what the decision was going to be.
So this part of the experience from my perspective is Di's walking into the labor room and there's doctor and doctor's assistant, midwife. Suddenly there's twice as many people in the room as there was before. She's a bit of a deer in headlights. You know, they tell her she's got to lie down in the bed. She's just so vulnerable.
They told me that I needed to get onto the bed and put my legs into stirrups, which for me was like the last thing I wanted to do because I knew that it wouldn't be helpful to my labor. And they said that as far as the vacuum extraction goes, like you lie down to have it done. So I was feeling pretty annoyed that that was going to be what it was. But again, I was tired, I needed help, and this was the next best option. So they put me into the bed. My legs were shaking. I'm not sure if they were shaking from exhaustion or shaking from like adrenaline of seeing a doctor. At this point, like the lights were still kind of dim, but I think they had to turn some on for the doctor to do her examination. And when the doctor did her examination, she essentially just straight away was like, "You're only 6 centimeters, so you shouldn't even be pushing. We're going to stop pushing right away." And then all of a sudden she started like looking me right in the face and she was like, "We're not going to do the vacuum. We need to start talking about other methods of what we're going to do." And so at this point, like she did the one thing that we knew we didn't want a doctor to come in and do, and that was to start offloading all the interventions that she could provide. I couldn't really process what she was saying. All I could process was 6 centimeters, not ready to push yet, and intervention has to be done. So my head is spiraling into worst case scenario. Like they're going to have to give me drugs. They're going to give me like an epidural. They're going to give me a C-section. Like we're about to go down this rabbit hole of things that I definitely don't want to happen. And that's all I remember thinking about in that moment. So I'm in a pretty awful headspace after that. I'm feeling shaky, I'm feeling tired, and now I'm thinking worst case scenarios. Like I'm ready to give up. I think my midwife also says she needs to go home in order to have like a break because she hasn't had a full break yet and it's been a long day, and then eventually come back. So I'm like, yep, if my midwife goes, like I'm out. Like I don't think I'm going to be able to do this.
And for me, I just go into full protect my wife at every corner mode. And part of my journey for mental health and men's health has been learning about the idea of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And it's essentially just taking those traits, you know, whether you be male or female, but those traits of the masculine or feminine in the most wholesome form that they can possibly be. And a masculine form is protection. And I just really felt myself shift into another space then, where I was just, you know, would jump on a grenade for her. And I was ready for whatever was to come. And so what happened, what she explained happened. And when the doctor said that she was 6 centimeters and then immediately started rattling off interventions, that was a really like kind of a brutal moment. Di was like more than ever a deer in the headlights. I could see she was spiraling. I know her really well. And I immediately just not immediately, she probably got about 3 or 4 interventions in. She was talking induction. She was talking all these kinds of things that we had a plan, and we knew what our options were. We were very educated on the process, and that's what I said to her. I just piped in, I cut her off, and I was like, look, we're actually really educated on this, on what our options are. I've heard what you've said, and I know exactly what you're saying that you're recommending. What we'd like right now is for everyone to get out of the room, so that my wife and I can talk. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing we need to do right now is stop pushing and rest, right? And then she essentially said yes, super respectful. Everybody started getting out of the room. The midwife then turned to me, helped corral everyone out of the room, was really supportive and advocated for that. And then when everyone got out of the room, she turned around and kind of like asked if she should stay. And I was like, no, you get out. You get out too. Like, it just needs to be me and Di. And Di kind of turned to me, and she was scared, and she wasn't sure what was happening. And I just gave her a cuddle. I got on the bed with her, and I gave her a cuddle, and I said, you don't have to worry about anything. All you need to worry about is that you don't need to push right now. What we're going to do is we're going to rest. And we just laid like that for about 20 minutes. The news and the shock and the fear and the adrenaline dropped her contractions down massively, and she went from like full labor wanting to push to like a contraction every 10 minutes. It was like quite jarring.
But we get to a point where it's just Sam and I, and we're able to talk through what we're going to do next. No one else is in the room. There's no doctors, no midwives. It's just Sam and I let him know that I'm feeling a little bit scared at the moment. I'm feeling really tired, and I just need to rest. I'm also feeling really discouraged at this point, and so we make the decision that we're just going to slow down. The fact that I'm only 6 centimeters and not ready to push is not the worst case scenario. Nothing has gone wrong. Baby's heart rate, which has been monitored intermittently throughout, is completely fine, and all my body needs is to rest and then the contractions to build up and get me there.
So at this point, the midwife's come back in, and I've told her that we're going to lie on the floor and we're going to rest, and it's what Di wants. And so Di's in the position she described, and I'm just lying behind her with my palm just pressed into her pelvis to open it up so that she can just relax and try and sleep through the contractions. And the midwife is just, no one else is allowed in the room. The lights are really dim, and she's just walking around quietly, just getting everything prepared for what could potentially come next.
So we make the decision to slow down. My contractions have slowed down as well at this point. And we lie down on the floor on a floor mat with the birth ball or a peanut ball, I think, between my legs. And I just kind of like doze off and sleep between my contractions. At this point, I am so tired that being able to rest in this way was amazing. And I think my body definitely agreed that this is what we needed, because after a while or so of kind of dozing off and in of contractions, they start to ramp up again, and so I'm once again having to get up and on all fours to get and breathe through my contractions. Roosters, man. They just come in at the worst points and then they just don't stop. Sam was my absolute rock at this point. He was so supportive. He was so loving. And he helped to hear me out, but also calm me down and let me know that we weren't in this dire all or nothing position. We were actually doing a really good job, and we just needed that rest. And he was so right, because as soon as I had that rest, I felt my confidence returning. I felt my positivity returning, and I felt capable to do things again. The bath gets drained during this whole debacle as well with the doctors, so that was disheartening too. It all just felt like a step back in the wrong direction. So once things ramped up again after that rest, it felt really good, but still there was things that just weren't quite right. My midwife ended up telling me that it had been quite a while, in fact 4 hours since I peed last. And so the next thing that we wanted to focus on was trying to release my bladder, because we were thinking maybe the bladder was in the way of the baby descending. So into the shower Sam and I went, and I'm just between toilet and shower, hot water on me, trying to encourage my body to pee, squatting down, doing whatever would naturally bring on a pee, and absolutely nothing. And it was just really discouraging to just not be able to progress, not be able to do this. And so my midwife is getting worried now, and her and Sam are suggesting that we intervene in some way to help me not only rest but also to relieve my bladder. And so the next thing that needed to happen was she was going to examine me once again. She was going to put in a catheter so that we could release the urine from my bladder. And also we were going to do morphine after Sam and I chatted and said that this would be the best thing. Essentially, the morphine would mean that I would have time to sleep, I would have time to rest, and then as it wears off, I'd be back into like the heavy contractions pushing phase. This time would also allow my midwife to go home, have a rest, give Sam a chance to rest as well, because he's been up with me and putting counter pressure on my back this whole time. He's exhausted too. And so we all decide that this is the best course of action.
So at this point, everything has happened exactly how Di said. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon now, so we've been going for about 17 hours since the water was broken. Our midwife had been with us for, or at least, involved on the clock for about 12 hours. The purpose of the morphine was to put Di to sleep for a good 5 hours or so. Then her contractions would keep running while she was asleep, and then when she woke up, she would be further along and kind of ready to push. And it also would have had the added benefit of resting her womb because of all the pushing, 3 hours of pushing that she'd done earlier. The reason that we didn't want to do morphine was because there's a risk that you deliver the baby still under the influences of morphine, and morphine will make its way to the baby. It's harmless while the baby's part of your system. All the impacts are just very, very, very minor. There wasn't too much worry on that front. The worry was once the baby was born, it was really important for us to do the breast crawl, and that's where it does affect the baby. If the baby comes out druggy and sleepy and not able to tap into those primal instincts that allow the breast crawl, then you lose that opportunity and you lose that natural oxytocin, and that's what we wanted to avoid. So we were very adamant about allowing the morphine to completely run its course.
So catheter, we try to put in, it stings, it's uncomfortable, and I think we don't have much success. Putting in the cannula as well, which is the point where they then put the morphine or whatever drug they put into you, was also not very successful. And so my midwife's like, you know what, let's do the examination first, because if I examine you and you're actually a lot further along than you were a while ago, then we might not even need the morphine. So let's do that first. And I'm like, heck yeah. Like, if we can prevent intervention just by you checking me, like, I'm into it. So she does her examination and she's able to push my cervix past baby's head, which is really positive, and we end up making the decision that morphine is not needed, thank goodness, because I did not do my research into morphine, but at least Sam had. I think we still end up doing the catheter after this point as well though, because we do need to release the bladder to make sure that baby has enough room to descend. I remember just kissing and cuddling Sam during this moment to just try to like bring the oxytocin into my body, keep me calm, keep me happy, and help me relax. And so eventually catheter goes in, cannula goes in, and cervix has been pushed past baby's head, and Sam and I just kind of relax on the bed. I'm a bit foggy on how this all goes, but I think I'm trying to rest again on the bed. I'm laying on my side, and then I start getting this strong urge to push again. So it's that same feeling of needing to do a poo. And we make the decision to try the gas, which now I'm aware of is the second time that we're trying it. My midwife ends up ramping up the gas so that it's super strong and effective, and I'm breathing into the gas just to help me relax and also to help my mind kind of relax as well, because at this point I'm having this mental battle between like worst case scenario.
This is a good spot for me to come in and tell my perspective of the story. So during that resting phase, we did make the decision to attempt the gas just to help Di relax a bit more, to sleep. That's why she had tried it earlier. So she had greenlit it. We had decided we were going to try nitrous oxide as an option because of its low impact on the pregnancy and on the baby. What happened was Di had requested initially that she didn't want it to be very strong. Di's pretty straight edge when it comes to that kind of stuff, and the midwife only put it to like 20-25%, just a little bit, just to take the edge off. And it was so ineffective that Di found it inconvenient to breathe in through the mask, and so she'd rather just breathe air, and she maybe had 2 big deep breaths if she was like, nah, and just threw it away. So that had happened at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're now at the phase where she's on the table, the cervix has been pushed back. The midwife's like, I think you're ready to push. We don't need to do the morphine. Like, this is happening. I'm not going anywhere. But you are actually exhausted. We were going to do the morphine because you needed a break. So she was like, I recommend that you have the gas. And I'll never forget it. Di turned to her and she's like, I don't think the gas works very well. And the midwife looked at me and she smiled and she's like, I will make sure it works well. So I see her walk over and she turns it from 25% up to whatever the amount was. That was an effective dose. Gives it to Di. Di probably has about 2 or 3 deep breaths. And then Di just shifts from this exasperated negative, like, I'm going to have intervention, like it's like this sucks. She just like completely just switches into this beautiful positive gear, and she's like, oh my God, and she starts crying happy tears, like, I'm going to meet my baby soon. And the entire energy of the room just completely shifts into this positive energy. And then without saying anything, she just starts making these guttural pushing noises.
I'm breathing in the gas and just relaxing with Sim. I am like, I'm pushing. Like, I'm bearing down and I am pushing. And it is feeling so good and it is feeling so natural. And honestly, it's out of my control at this point. It's not something that I think I need to do. It's something that I just can't help but do.
And the midwife and I look at each other and we're like, Di, are you pushing? And she just doesn't reply. And then it happens again. Guttural noise and pushing. And the midwife looks at me and she's like, I think she's pushing. We're pushing. And she's like, I need another midwife. And she just runs out of the room because, like, policy is there needs to be a second midwife there to support the midwife, which is great because it means the primary midwife just doesn't have to leave the bed. And at this point, I want to bring up why I brought up the divine masculine earlier, because this was the moment that the divine feminine entered the room, and we were both in that space of just the purest energy I think we've ever been in our relationship. And I was just holding her hand and whispering in her ear, and she was saying things like, I'm so tired, I don't think I can push. And then I would just whisper back, like, no, you've got this. You are 100%. All you need to do is dig deep, and it's within you, and you can do it. And then she would just make eye contact with me, and then it would happen, and she would do it. And it was just so powerful. It brought tears to my eyes.
I end up asking for the music to get switched back on as well, because I noticed that during the doctors it got switched off. So it gets switched on, and instantly the first thing I remember is this bird call sound. And I remember just as I'm breathing through these contractions and pushing and breathing the gas as the contractions are coming and hearing these bird calls, and I'm just feeling so incredible and clear-minded, like, my baby's coming. I am getting through this. The worst and the hardest part is over. We're about to meet our baby. And I just start going through all these thoughts out loud and sharing them with my support team, with my husband, with my midwife, crying and laughing and just sharing and loving. And the whole space just absolutely shifts and changes and is so much more positive. And slowly, I'm feeling baby coming lower and lower. The pressure is building down below. It's definitely starting to get a lot more painful. And yet, even though there's pain and pressure, it still all feels really, really good. And I think that comes back to my body's hormones just being able to communicate with one another and do what they need to do. So I wrote down exactly the types of thoughts that I was sharing out loud because I knew I would forget, and I definitely do. Like, it's all such a blur now. But essentially, I was sharing my gratefulness, my miscarriage experience, my excitement to be a mum and us to be parents, the process so far, so what we had gone through with the doctors. I was even grateful that we had the doctor come in and intervene, and the fact that I got to rest. I was sharing how amazing my team was, how grateful I was for them and my body through this whole process. These are all thoughts that I was practicing and thinking about throughout my pregnancy. And so it felt really beautiful to be able to share it out loud with them. I continued to push with love and laughter shared with my birth team. And I just felt amazing. I felt strong. I felt empowered. I felt in control. And I felt like this was natural and I was doing it. At some point, Nicole encouraged me to go on my hands and knees up on the bed with my back face towards her and Sam. I didn't feel like I had the strength to do this, and I said that to them, but they helped me up, and that felt amazing. And I really started to feel baby descend up at this point. The stinging and the pressure were definitely intense, but beautiful and manageable all at the same time. Nicole was using a warm compress on my perineum to help ease pressure there and discourage tearing from happening, and that felt amazing. That pressure on my sacrum from Sam continued to feel amazing and was easier for him to do while I was standing up. I kept asking Sam to tell me words that would help me relax. So things like I would say breathe, and then he would talk about, slow down your breath, focus on your breathing, or I would yell out relax. And so he would be like, relax your shoulders, relax your jaw. It was so cool because these are things that we didn't practice or say we were going to do at first. It just kind of happened and came to us in the moment. And it was just amazing how connected we were at this point. I asked him to tell me his excitement for Bub. I practiced the 3, 2, 1, relax, 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 breathing in my mind. And I think I was speaking it out loud as well. I mean, I don't even remember what I was speaking out loud and what I wasn't. I kept saying mantras like, I'm with all the women that have done this before me. This is a natural part of my body. My body knows what to do. I'm going to meet my bub soon. My body was made for this. And all of those mantras were really powerful and uplifting and helpful in this moment. I think eventually I came to a point where I was like, oh my God, this is really tough. Like, this is hard, but baby needs to come out. So like, we're pushing, like we gotta get this baby out. And so I guess all of those things together are the way that I was able to cope through what might be considered pain and instead turn it into just power in my body. Nicole also encouraged me to feel for baby's head down low, and that was absolutely incredible and really encouraging. It just made my pushing feel stronger because I could feel baby coming out. With a bit more power, I ended up pushing her head out, which gave so much relief because it was just the body left. And I had an urge to keep pushing, but Nicole told me not to. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I need to push, Nicole. I don't think I can't push. But essentially in that moment, baby still needed to turn to do the next part, which is why she told me to slow down. So I did my best to kind of breathe through it as I needed to, and then eventually push baby out the rest of the way. I was able to hear Bub at this point as well, which was such a sweet sound. As soon as she came out, we heard like a little squeak from her and then some more later on.
So this part of the story was a bit jarring and shocking for me because my perspective and where I was looking, I was set up to catch the baby, and what I was physically seeing crowning coming through was disproportionate to the size of the head that ended up popping out. And when Bub's head popped out, the color of it and the way the cheeks like flopped out just kind of sent me into like this shock, and it was like very pale and blue, and I was meant to be there ready to catch, and my reaction was to be like, whoa. And I took a step back, and the midwife, what are you doing? Like, where'd you go? Where are you? And I it was only a second, but that's the midwife was then there to do the next step anyway, which I wasn't confident in for our firstborn, maybe the second. But I was definitely still there, because then once baby made a noise and I knew that baby was okay, that's when I was like, oh, okay, no, I'm back in. But there was a slight moment of terror for me. And then when Bub came out, I was able to be handed Bub through, because Di was on her hands and knees. The midwife handed Bub to me through Di's legs, and then we're able to rotate Di onto her back, and I was able to hand Bub to Di.
Once baby was out, I lay back and my baby was handed to me by my husband, Sam, through my legs and onto my chest. She lay there on my chest and we were absolutely in awe of her beauty and her strength. She came out, eyes open, locked eyes with me and just stared me right in the face. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my child. And together we have gone through 9 incredible months and now we are here for this next chapter in our lives. My focus was completely on my beautiful baby at this point, and I'm just focusing on her and encouraging her to do the breast crawl, to breastfeed for the first time. And you would think that this is the end of this beautiful birth and beautiful story, but unfortunately things then take a turn.
So at this point, Di is completely overwhelmed with oxytocin. She is just completely tunnel visioned in on this baby, and the midwife is asking her to push again, to birth the placenta. You know, if you feel the need to push, she's essentially saying, if you feel the need to push, like lean into that feeling, because we need to get the placenta out. Di's not even paying attention to that, but she hears push and she goes, okay, yeah, I will. What ends up happening is the fears from earlier happen. Her womb ends up exhausting and collapsing as the placenta's coming away from the wall, and the placenta slightly tears on its way out while the midwife's on the cord. So the midwife immediately stops the process, don't push, and then a bleed starts happening. At this point, we were planning on leaving Bub connected to the placenta for a while, at least for the blood to finish draining out of the placenta before we cut the cord. The midwife turns to me and she's like, we're cutting this cord right now. Come over here and do it. And which is kind of funny for me. I do remember experiencing, like, well, I've held the baby. I was holding the baby's head as Bub came out of the body. Like, the cutting of the cord felt a bit trivial, but sure. Came over and cut the cord, and then as I cut the cord, I see what's happening down the bottom, and I see a lot of blood coming out, which is obviously the hemorrhage. And the midwife turns to me and she's like, I'm concerned that there's a bleed happening. I would really like some extra support. With your permission, I'm going to hit a button and it's going to get very busy in here. And I just said to her, look, our concerns were all for before Bub comes out. Bub is out. Bub's doing the breast crawl. As long as that continues, we're fine with whatever you need to do. And so she's like, thank you. And she walks over and she hits the emergency button and alarms start blaring.
But essentially what I remember happening at this point is it becomes an emergency situation. There is a lot of people that enter the room and the lights get turned back on. It's bright in there, things are happening, things are moving. I know that they are telling me that I'm bleeding, and I'm bleeding quite a lot. The placenta still needs to come out and hasn't come out yet. And then they're talking through the different things that they're going to do to my body in order to support me to deliver my placenta, in order to stop the bleeding from happening and to calm things down.
At this point, there are just doctors and nurses and people rushing into the room. I think there was probably about 15 or 16 people in the room at one point. Di is completely in her bubble, and I'm at the top of the bed over the pillow, just whispering into her ear, don't worry, just focus on Bub, and we're encouraging the breast crawl.
So I have people on both arms putting capulas in to put in different kinds of medications. At this point, even though all of this is happening in the room, I feel really safe and supported, and I'm almost just glad that I have my support team with me and that I'm being cared for.
Nicole, the midwife, never left Di's side. She was involved in the process the entire time, and she was advocating for Di the entire time, which was amazing because I shifted into a bit of a outside of my expertise. My research hadn't quite gone to what to do in that situation, so I was very much just like, save my wife. And the blood that was coming out was very concerning. I could see it from where I was standing, and there was probably about, throughout the process, probably about 2 minutes where I was unsure which direction it was going to head in because we weren't getting any positive news, and the bleed was continuing, and I wasn't really, I was deciphering small amounts of what was going on. Di was so much in a bubble, and just there was so much chaos going on, and amongst it all you could just hear, "You're beautiful, you've got this, you can do it, crawl, keep going." And Di was just so invested in what was happening. She was both hands on the bub, and then one hand got taken away for the cannula, and then she's being asked for the other arm, for another cannula so they can give multiple different types of medication to her, and she's like, yeah, take it, and she's wrestling so that she can keep holding on to the baby. And at one point a nurse says, "Dad, can you please take the baby? We need to administer medication now." And I was in this space where I didn't really compute what she said. We're in the middle of a breast crawl, and I was like, yeah, I guess so, it's emergency, we've got to take the bub. And I remember leaning forward to take bub, and then Nicole stepping in over the top and being like, "No, bub stays put, take her arm, Dad will hold bub on Mum's chest." And I was like, "Oh yeah, yes, of course that's what's going to happen, yeah, absolutely." And I was just so grateful for that moment because I definitely had that lapse. So I'm holding bub, Di's got both arms outstretched, and yeah, and then things progress.
I hear different things being mentioned to me, the placenta's out and that gives me relief. The bleeding has stopped, gives me more relief. And this whole time I'm just kind of going in between what's happening in the room around me and what's happening on my body with my baby and the safe feeling around me. Sam's doing an incredible job of just filtering the information that needs to come to me and just reassuring me that everything's okay around there as well. I also see my midwife just amongst it here and there, and that gives me a lot of confidence that I'm okay and I'm in safe hands. Once the emergency was over, everyone left the room, the lights were dimmed again, and it was just so much peace, so much love between myself, our new baby, and my husband. At this point, Bub also latched on to feed, and it was just such a surreal feeling and such an accomplishment to do this together. I just can't believe what an extraordinary birth story I get to tell you all. Even though it was such a roller coaster ride, even though there was intervention at the end and also potentially intervention in the middle, I am so proud of myself. I'm so proud of my birth team, and I'm walking away feeling so grateful and proud of the birth that I ended up having. The bleeding I experienced was severe. I lost 1.5 liters of blood, but because I had an iron infusion about a month earlier because I was feeling really fatigued and low in iron, I think that saved my life and I was okay. It was also so good that we were in the hospital setting and not at home during this moment, because it was just amazing how quick everyone acted and how quickly I went from an emergency situation to being okay. The bleeding over the next little while during my postpartum was all completely natural, and we actually got dispatched from the hospital the next evening because I was feeling good and there was nothing for them to be concerned about.
To summarize my experience, it was just such a roller coaster, but just a moment of pride in my life where I really felt like I stepped into the shoes of the man I want to be, and I really learnt that an experience like childbirth is just a series of decisions that you have to make that are shrouded in immense doubt, and you just need to stand in the closest thing that resembles your truth and your partner's truth, and commit to the decision that you make, and whatever comes of it, which could have gone in any direction for us. I'm just so grateful that it did go in the direction that it did, and we came out the other side with a really fulfilling experience. But at any point, any decision we made could have led us in a different direction, or a lot of the decisions I made may have had no real bearing on the outcome either, and none of that's neither here or there. It was just the experience that we had, and it was just so. I remember getting to the end of it and walking around the room to just record the aftermath of the experience and the record the energy of what had just happened. The footage that you're looking at now is just minutes after the doctors and the nurses have left the room, and there's still blood on the table and on the bed, and there's still evidence of everything that had happened. And I just remember walking over and just sitting down and realizing it was the first time I'd sat down in a comfortable way in 19 hours, and just being just listening to the sounds of my daughter with my wife safe.
And so we welcomed into the world beautiful little Eloise Tia. She came out 51 centimeters long and 3.75 kilograms, or over 8 pounds. She came out with a full head of hair and strength that I just hoped that she would have. And we have had so many beautiful moments since. Hey? We are so in love with being parents. We are learning every day. There are big challenges and also huge triumphs. And yeah, I'm sure there are so many more things ahead of us. But I just wanted to sit down, reflect on this and share, because so many birth stories are so beautiful to hear. They are all so different. And like I said, I felt so empowered and so grateful for the decisions that I made, and also the knowledge I had behind me to make those decisions in the moment. So thank you for joining me on this video. It was such a long one, so I really appreciate you being here. I send you all my love. Until next time, see you guys.